In 2026, the United States reaches its semi-quincentennial. 250 years since the Declaration of Independence set a radical idea loose in the world, that a nation could be built on the consent of the governed. To celebrate that anniversary in a way that feels earned, not abstract, take a grand tour through 10 national parks and park sites where American history and American landscape meet. Some are cathedral-like natural wonders. Others are small, intensely human places where arguments, sacrifices, migrations, and ambitions reshaped the country. Together, they form a living encyclopedia of the American experiment. Begin where the nation's paperwork became a nation. Independence National Historical Park in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is not a monument to vague patriotism. It's a compact neighborhood of brick buildings and narrow streets that still carry the scale of the 18th century. Independence Hall is the anchor. Constructed in the 1730s as the Pennsylvania State House, it later hosted the Second Continental Congress, the signing of the Declaration in 1776, and the Constitutional Convention in 1787. The room itself is strikingly practical. Green cloth, wooden chairs, tall windows, less grand than you might expect, which only sharpens the realization that world-changing decisions were made in a space designed for debate, not ceremony. Nearby, Congress Hall served as the U.S. Capitol in the 1790s, when the new federal government was still proving it could function. And then there's the Liberty Bell, famous for its crack, but more important for its afterlife. Abolitionists embraced it as a symbol in the 19th century, and its meaning broadened from independence to liberty more fully realized. Travel tip. Timed entry is common for the most popular sites. Arrive early and pair the visit with a walk through the surrounding historic district to feel the city's original footprint. From Philadelphia's meeting rooms, move to the hardship that made independence plausible. Valley Forge National Historical Park, also in Pennsylvania. In the winter of 1777–78, George Washington's Continental Army encamped here not because it was comfortable, but because it was strategically placed to watch the British in Philadelphia while keeping supply lines within reach. The story of Valley Forge is often reduced to suffering, and there was plenty: cold, hunger, inadequate clothing, disease. But the deeper lesson is institutional. This is where the Army became more professional, aided by training reforms associated with Baron Friedrich von Steuben, a Prussian officer who brought discipline and standardized drills. Valley Forge is a landscape of fields and wooded ridges crossed by trails. It's quiet enough to let the mind do what the site demands. Imagine endurance not as heroics, but as routine. Practical note. Visit in late fall or winter if you want the atmosphere that shaped the event. In spring, the same hills become almost deceptively gentle. If the Revolution is the birth certificate, the Civil War is the crucible that tested whether the nation could survive its own contradictions. Gettysburg National Military Park, also in Pennsylvania, is where that test turned in early July 1863. The battlefield is vast, but it's organized by geography that mattered in real time: ridgelines, roads, and open fields that offered little mercy to infantry. You can trace the battle's arc from Seminary Ridge to Cemetery Ridge, through the wheat field and Devil's Den, and out to Little Round Top, where desperate defense helped secure the Union line. The human scale is sobering: tens of thousands of casualties in 3 days. Then comes the second act of Gettysburg, quieter but just as defining. Lincoln's address at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery. A brief speech that reframed the war as a struggle for a new birth of freedom. Travel tip. The battlefield rewards a guided tour or a well-planned driving route. Without structure, it can feel like too many fields. With context, the terrain becomes a readable document. From battlefields and assembly rooms, shift to a different kind of gateway. Statue of Liberty National Monument, and Ellis Island in New York Harbor. The Statue of Liberty, dedicated in 1886, was a gift from France, but it became an American mirror, reflecting the country's ideals and its anxieties. The engineering is part of the story. Gustave Eiffel's internal framework supports the copper skin, designed to withstand wind and weather. Yet the statue's power comes from what it promised, especially as immigration surged. Ellis Island, the federal immigration station from 1892 to 1954, processed more than 12 million immigrants. The Great Hall still echoes with the logic of that era. Medical inspections, legal questions, the tension between welcome and exclusion. It's an essential stop for understanding how we the people expanded through waves of newcomers, often greeted with opportunity, sometimes with suspicion, always with paperwork. Practical note: reserve pedestal or crown access far in advance. And if you have family immigration stories, Ellis Island's records can make history personal in a single search. Now the tour turns outward, toward the landscapes that shaped American identity as the nation expanded. Acadia National Park in Maine offers a bracing Atlantic beginning. It's often described as the first national park east of the Mississippi, and while the East had earlier protected areas, Acadia, established as a national monument in 1916 and redesignated a national park in 1919, became a flagship for Eastern conservation. Its history includes a distinctive blend of private philanthropy and public purpose. Donors helped assemble land that became a shared inheritance. The park's granite mountains meet the sea in a way that feels both rugged and intimate. Cadillac Mountain is famous for sunrise views. The carriage roads, financed by John D. Rockefeller Jr., are a quieter marvel. Stone bridges and crushed stone paths built for human pace, not horsepower. Travel tip: Acadia's popularity peaks in summer and leaf season. Consider late spring for fewer crowds and crisp visibility, and use the shuttle system when it's running to reduce parking stress. For the modern idea of American wilderness as a place you can still enter on foot, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, straddling Tennessee and North Carolina, is the essential chapter. It's the most visited national park in the country, and that popularity is not accidental. It's accessible, biodiverse, and layered with human history. The Smokies hold remnants of southern Appalachian communities, old homesteads, cemeteries, and churches that complicate any notion of an untouched landscape. Ecologically, the park is a global standout for temperate biodiversity. Its range of elevations creates multiple climate zones, and its life list includes an astonishing variety of plants, salamanders, and synchronous fireflies that turn certain nights into living constellation shows. Cades Cove offers a broad valley with historic buildings and abundant wildlife sightings, while Klingman's Dome rises to an observation tower that can feel like standing on the spine of the Appalachians. Practical note: treat bear country seriously. Store food properly, keep distance, and remember that the park's wildness is real, even when the parking lots are full. Then comes Yellowstone National Park, mainly in Wyoming with parts in Montana and Idaho, the first national park in the world, established in 1872. Yellowstone is often reduced to geysers, but it's better understood as a restless planetary system on display. The park sits atop a volcanic hotspot. Heat from below drives more than 10,000 hydrothermal features. Old Faithful is famous for its relative predictability, but the broader Upper Geyser Basin is the real lesson, a landscape where water, rock, and heat negotiate constantly. The Grand Prismatic Spring shows what microbiology can paint: bands of color created by thermophiles, organisms adapted to extreme temperatures. Yellowstone is also a key chapter in the American debate over wildlife and management. The reintroduction of gray wolves in 1995 to 96, after decades of absence, became one of the most discussed conservation actions in modern U.S. history, influencing elk behavior and riparian ecosystems in ways that continue to be studied. Travel tip: visit in shoulder seasons for quieter roads, but be prepared for rapidly changing weather, and never approach bison, which are faster and more dangerous than they look. If Yellowstone is Earth's internal energy made visible, Yosemite National Park in California is the American landscape as icon: granite, water, and vertical space. Yosemite Valley's sheer walls, El Capitan and Half Dome, helped define how Americans imagine the West, not merely as territory, but as grandeur. The park's history is also a foundational conservation story. The Yosemite Grant of 1864, signed by Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, protected Yosemite Valley and the Mariposa Grove of giant sequoias for public use, an early step toward the national park idea. Later, figures like John Muir argued for broader protection, shaping the philosophy of preservation. Yosemite's waterfalls, Yosemite Falls, among the tallest in North America, are seasonal, roaring in spring and thinning by late summer in dry years, a reminder that even famous scenery is governed by climate and snowpack. Travel tip: reservations and traffic management can be significant. Consider visiting in late spring for peak waterfalls and use the park shuttle to move through the valley efficiently. For pure continental scale, no place speaks more clearly than Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona. The canyon is not simply big, it is legible time. Its layers expose nearly 2 billion years of Earth history, from ancient metamorphic rocks near the river to younger sedimentary layers stacked above. The Colorado River did not carve this in a single dramatic act. It cut and recut through uplift, erosion, and changing climates over immense spans. That sense of time has always competed with human time here. Indigenous nations have lived in and around the canyon for millennia, and their connections to the place are living, not archaeological. When you stand on the south rim and watch shadows move across the temples and buttes, you're watching geology become theater. Practical note: the rim is high elevation and can be cold even when the desert below is hot. If you hike, remember the canyon punishes optimism. Down is optional, up is mandatory, and water planning is non-negotiable. To understand how the American West became not just a landscape but a national story, head to the Black Hills of South Dakota, where Mount Rushmore National Memorial rises from granite. It's not a national park in the strict sense, but it is a National Park Service site and a crucial stop on a semi-quincentennial tour because it forces a conversation about identity. The carved faces, Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, were chosen to represent the nation's founding, expansion, preservation, and development. The monument's scale is engineering as symbolism, begun in 1927 under sculptor Gutzen Borglum. Yet the setting matters just as much. The Black Hills are sacred to the Lakota and central to a long history of conflict and broken promises, especially after gold was discovered in the region in the 1870s. Nearby, Wind Cave National Park adds a different kind of wonder, one of the world's notable cave systems, famous for boxwork formations, delicate honeycomb-like calcite structures rarely found elsewhere. Travel tip: treat this region as a multi-day stop. Pair the memorial with the surrounding parks, and with time to learn the indigenous history that the stone alone cannot tell. Finally, to tie the grand tour together, visit a place that explains why these sites exist at all. The idea that public land can be a democratic inheritance. Many national parks were born from a uniquely American argument that certain landscapes and historic places should not belong only to the wealthy or to whoever arrives first, but to everyone, protected for the long term. That ideal has never been simple. It has involved displacement, conflict, and hard choices about what to preserve and how. And yet, the National Park Service system, created in 1916, remains one of the country's most influential civic inventions, blending science, storytelling, recreation, and memory. Taken as a semi-quincentennial grand tour, these 10 places form a timeline you can walk. Independence and Valley Forge show the fragile mechanics of founding. Gettysburg shows the cost of keeping the Union together and the meaning of freedom contested and expanded. Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty show how the nation's identity was renewed by millions of arrivals. Acadia and the Smokies show conservation in the East, nature shaped by human hands and protected by human choice. Yellowstone and Yosemite show the West as a crucible for preservation and a stage for American imagination. The Grand Canyon shows time itself, vast enough to humble any anniversary. And the Black Hills sites, Rushmore and nearby Wind Cave, show how national symbols can inspire and unsettle at once, pushing the country to examine whose stories are carved into the landscape and whose must be spoken aloud. If you travel this route in 2026, carry 2 maps in your mind. One is geographic: coasts, mountains, plains, deserts, and river-carved chasms. The other is civic: revolution, union, migration, expansion, preservation. The semi-quincentennial is not only a celebration of longevity, it's a chance to measure the distance between ideals and reality, and to see, on foot, in stone, in forest shade, in geyser steam, how a nation keeps rewriting its own meaning across the land it chose to protect.